Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor from beautiful, sunny New Orleans, Louisiana, high atop my penthouse on Fortin Street. All right, it's a shotgun with a porch, overlooking the New Orleans Fairgrounds and Racetrack, where we are only 4 days away from the start of the 51st annual New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, or as we call it, Jazz Fest. Those of you who will immediately say, Tom, you're still mathematically challenged. How can it be the 51st? We, of course, have not had the festival for 2 years due to COVID. So we are really looking forward to this year. And the weather looks to be beautiful. That's a shot of the front gate there behind me with my, well, I don't need to introduce Gail. Pretty much everybody knows who Gail was. Rachi Messing, my partner in mischief, as Browning Marian used to refer to us, from Tel Aviv again, Rachi, today?
I am coming to you from my house, so I am back home where it's a beautiful 80 degrees and perfect beach weather. So we're happy over here.
Nice.
It's always good when it's beach weather.
And we are really pleased today to have with us two guests. First, unless you've been asleep in the e-discovery business for the last 10 years, you will know who Patrick Hood is. But for those of you who have been asleep, Patrick's a partner at Shook, Hardy and Brown. He's a co-chair of the data, and tell me if I get any of this wrong, Patrick. Co-chair of the Data and Discovery Strategies practice. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it's Shook, Hardy and Bacon.
Bacon. I was even going to correct him on that one.
What did I say? See, right away. Oh man, no, that's a throwback. Wasn't it Shook, Hardy, something Brown years ago? No. Okay, so I was trying to cover there. I'm doing Michael Jackson, trying to cover. All right, see, that's what I get for drinking water instead of coffee before I do these things. Shook, Hardy and Bacon you're in the DC office, right?
DC, correct.
Patrick's also really well known as the co-founder and GC of the EDI, the Electronic Discovery Institute. Did I get that name right?
That is.
Okay. EDI is a think tank nonprofit that deals with a lot of litigation processes questions and is really well known for perhaps in my opinion, one of the best presented and best attended conferences in the space every year that unfortunately I don't get to go to every year. Where were you at this last year, Patrick? I know you shift locales. Were you in Florida or no?
We were in Santa Barbara this past year, the lovely Ritz-Carlton there. It was a nice event. It was nice to see everybody. It was a little under 300 is a little less than what our normal crowd was, but it was great to see everybody again. And that's, the most important part of it all.
Great. We're also joined by Shannon Schoultz, who's an associate at Shook, Hardy and Bacon, not Brown, and specializing in data discovery and info governance issues in your practice, Shannon. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and we're going to let Patrick steer the conversation a little bit to issues of hiring and diversity and inclusion and those issues as we get along here. But first, Patrick, I'd like to ask you, as we always start off with, how did you get into this wacky business of ours? What got you not just into law, but the double hit of craziness, lawyer and e-discovery? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Feel free to go as far back as you want. We're always interested in, kind of. Yeah.
Well,
I was a young 4-year-old,
Yeah, back when days were old and nights were bold. No, but seriously, I started out my career even before law school in the entertainment industry. So I was a event and music promoter. Did events with like Run DMC, De La Soul on the one side of the spectrum, and then the other side of the musical spectrum, Moby, some other sort of acts that you might have heard of. And
I'm having a hard time picturing you with any of those people, Patrick. Did you have the little Run DMC hat? Did you?
I did not have the hat. I actually have a fun picture with me and Biz Marquis somewhere. I've got to dig out.
Sweet.
Nice.
And where were you Where were you, Patrick? This was
So this was in upstate New York and then New York City. And so I was doing these events back in college, and then kind of pivoted to the entertainment business because I made friends with all of these artists. And essentially what one of them said to me one day was, hey, you should consider going into the representation business of, the sort of agency type of stuff. And I really wasn't interested in that. But one thing led to another. I was at one of my events in New York. I thought that it was kind of at the pinnacle where we had like 3,800 people in the building and then another 3,000 in line that couldn't get in. And there was no real sort of next step of where this would go. And I wasn't thinking festivals, which is actually where it all turned into.
Yeah.
So I decided to go to law school. And, as part of that, building that business, you learn a lot about computers yourself. Like, you have to learn about design software and budgeting software and all the sort of things that go into, lo and behold, a practice in discovery. So I actually moved but I moved here actually to work for a lawyer in the entertainment space who represented a lot of the EDM artists that, and still does. And what happened, I got here and the Napster / 9/11 happened. And then lo and behold, I decided to go back to school and work on a tax LLM of all things. And this story does go somewhere, believe it or not. And then a friend of mine was working on like a document review project, and she said, "Hey, you understand this technology stuff? Could you come down here and help?" And one thing led to another. I met and he offered me a job. And so from there, it was picking up the phone and bothering people like you, Tom and Rachi, like how do you do certain things? Going to talk to Mark at Cisco, Mark Michaels at Cisco, for example, is one of my friends, and Jeff Gilmetti from back in the day, just really trying to figure out what other companies were doing so I could try and match that or do at least as good as a job as they're doing. And then just kind of got off to the races and started to make a lot of friends in the industry like you guys did. And so when I was in-house, I was there over a period of, I think, in my different roles, around 7 years, around 7 or 8 years as at the look back. And then it's kind of history from there. Went to the SEC, same sort of role, and then came here to Shook, and they'll carry me out of here is what I would think.
So
let me interrupt just a sec, Rocky. I'm sorry. My first of many. First, Patrick, I want to thank you for not mentioning the fact that you went to Syracuse twice, right? Undergrad and law school. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. As a Johns Hopkins graduate, of course, we have many ugly memories of trips to Syracuse in the 60s and late 60s and early 70s. But before we get further, Shannon, let's just interrupt real quick here and ask you, what was your career path? How did you get into this wacky business?
Yeah, sure.
And then I'll turn it back to Rocky.
Okay.
Sounds good. So I'm originally from South Carolina. I did college at the University of South Carolina. And when I was in college, I was interning for a congressman. He's still in Congress, Congressman James Clyburn. And my office in Columbia, South Carolina, encouraged me to apply to work for his office in DC. And I thought there's no way they would hire a 22-year-old with little to no professional experience to work on Capitol Hill. But I got on Capitol Hill and realized all the staffers are early 20-year-olds who don't know a whole lot. So that's how I got to DC. So I was here. I fell in love with the city and decided to apply to law school. So went to law school here in DC and was thinking that I wanted to do like education policy work, family law, applied for a clerkship with a judge who at the time was a family law judge, had been a family law judge for 25 years. 2 years later, when I actually started my clerkship, she had switched to a criminal calendar. So I ended up clerking, doing something that I really didn't want to do, but stuck it out for 2 years, and it was a great experience. And then after that, I went to a small plaintiff side law firm and was doing all sorts of things and found myself essentially running like pre-litigation all on my own, sifting through documents, trying to figure out how to find that smoking gun the night before a deposition. And it really just got my mind thinking like there has to be a better way for smaller firms to sift through all of this e-discovery. And sure enough, if you start Googling e-discovery related things, Patrick Oot is going to pop up. And so I saw that Shakardi Bacon, I had never heard of the firm, but I saw they were based in Kansas City, but had a Washington, D.C. office. And I was able to meet Patrick. And from our first phone conversation, we kind of hit it off and just had a really good relationship. And he really took a shot on me. I didn't know a whole lot at the time, but I told him that I was a quick learner. I was interested in it. And so I started at Shook, and it has been smooth sailing ever since.
And how long have you been there?
I've been at Shook now going on 4 years.
4 years. Okay, thank you.
And Shannon, so what was your undergrad in?
It's funny, Patrick mentioned that he was in entertainment. My undergraduate degree is in sport and entertainment management. But when I realized my first year of law school that was just looking at contracts all day long, I was like,
Getting out of that, boring. And like, did you have any thoughts of law beforehand, like when you were in undergrad or earlier? Like, was that something on the horizon, or was that something totally out of touch?
Yeah, no, I did. When I was about 13 or 14, my parents always were signing my sister and I up for different programs over the summer. They were always like, you're not just going to sit at home and play video games. So I did a pre-law mock trial program when I was 13, and I loved it. I went all the way to like the final round, got to argue a case in front of a panel of judges. They were attorneys. And I just thought that was so neat. So I always had an interest in the law, just didn't know sort of what path I would take. I definitely didn't know that I would end up in the e-discovery space for sure.
As no one does when, even when they go to law school, they don't expect to end up in the e-discovery space. So, okay. So both of you kind of took those kind of semi-traditional paths to get to law school and followed some of your interests and really have taken advantage of that now. From a technology standpoint, like there's a question for both of you, either one of you, growing up, like, were you tinkering? Were you just already, growing up with a computer in the house and that was just standard? Kind of, what was your introduction to technology and did it capture you? Or was it just one of those things that was there and therefore now it's kind of one of those things that's just typical? Either one.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, I'll go for it. I still remember the first day we got a computer in my home. I was 8 years old. We got a Gateway computer, and I had some experience because like our elementary schools were starting to introduce technology in school. And it was my older sister and I who taught our parents how to use a computer, how to set up an email. I think our first email was AOL. My dad still has his AOL, and I'm like, please just get Gmail. Has his AOL. And my first memories of technology is that you couldn't be on the internet and also use the landline phone. So we had very set designated times in the afternoon that our parents would allow us to use the computer, get familiar with it. But then after that, it's like, you got to get off because we don't want the landlines tied up. So those are like my first memories of technology and really learning.
Speaking of, I remember I'd sneak in at 1 a.m. to get on the computer because that's when no one would be on the phone until one time. I don't remember why my mom picked up the phone at 2:30 or something and heard the squeaking. And that's how she knew to come downstairs and kick me off the computer. So yeah.
Now I'll date myself. I remember as a young boy in upstate Vermont, not far from Syracuse, actually. A little further north, but anyways, we had what were called party lines for the telephone. Has anybody ever heard that phrase?
I am familiar. But...
Yeah, it means everybody on the street shared the same telephone line, right? The phones were so new that so you would pick up the phone and instead of hearing a squeak, you'd hear one of your neighbors talking to somebody and you'd try to be embarrassed and hang it up and try to pick up again.
And Tom dated himself. So
yeah. Really dated myself.
Yep. So awesome. Okay. So sorry to interrupt, Shannon. You then so grew up with computers from 8 years old and that kind of just grabbed you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I like to say as a millennial, we are the children of the internet. We know life sort of pre-internet, and then we were introduced to it as like we were growing up. So I've always been fascinated with it, and just trying to see what's the next hot thing that is going to come out, because I feel like you blink and there's a new technology, a new thing to learn, a new social media platform to familiarize yourself with. So I've always been interested, and I feel like I have a little bit of a creative side of me too that piques my interest as it relates to technology.
And do you find, jumping way ahead, that nowadays you've got to stay on top of those types of things, like the general trends when it comes to social media and other things in regards to dealing with your clients? Do you find that that's a necessity? Do you find that that's something that it's not really gonna get there on the corporate side for a couple of years? Like, where do you find yourself in terms of your practice?
Sure, absolutely. I think it's always smart to stay on top of the new and the best, because clients are always looking for ways to maximize their efficiency. And I think that as new technologies roll out, there's always new things that you can introduce to a client, and being able to understand it, sort of get ahead of it as it's rolling out, I think is imperative to keeping our clients sort of at the top of their game.
Cool.
Just the way it is at Boudreaux's Bait Shop in Opelousas, Louisiana. They're just on top of that internet.
Top of the technology, exactly.
Yeah.
All the trends.
Yeah.
And so, Patrick, Tom mentioned that EDI is obviously a big piece of your fame, infamy, whatever you want to call it. Where'd that come from? How did that get going?
So, gosh, there was Rachi, I'll send you our yearbook if you don't have a copy of it. If I even have one around, I will hold it up. Oh, there it is, actually. So EDI for our 10-year, the whole story is right here.
Oh, really?
I'll send you guys each one. We did it rather than the conference during the pandemic. We put together a virtual conference, and so the team to really kind of do something special for the 10th year, which was a bummer that it was virtual. We put together a very nice yearbook, which was actually an idea from Julie from ProSearch and I. We were in Lake Tahoe at the last event and said, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we put this together? So we actually pulled it off, and pretty much like a old
That's awesome.
Yeah, like pictures from the events. And so everybody that attended the virtual version got a copy sent to them, and really to kind of have that sense of community. But the reason I mentioned that is the story of EDIs there, and essentially it started. We were back to the Verizon days, kind of looking at all different technologies. What is now called TAR. It wasn't called that back then. And there was a consultant, her name was Ann Kershaw, that kind of kept on coming by and suggesting that she did a study on, I think that involved some data with H5, which is now a company that's owned by Lighthouse, as these things do. So she was starting a new company. I think it was called Reasonable Discovery, and she was asking if we had data available that her company could use, and we thought that it would be a better initiative to push this into the nonprofit space. And we would have more, just momentum with the judiciary and kind of thoughtfulness, rather than trying to prop up some, the
individual
firm or independent firm around it. So got Herb involved, Herb Royblatt, who was on the
I remember that.
And then we pushed the first research project out. I want to say 2009, 2010, something around there, where we took the MCI acquisition data from Verizon, and we said, well, what if we used, predictive coding, technology assisted review, whatever it might be. And we had a bake-off, and we asked each one of the providers to tell us what they think is responsive in the set. And the interesting thing that happened is we saw that, and then as we wrote in the paper, that the technology performed as good as the humans did, and so saving many millions of dollars. And then there are new companies since, and a lot of additional research. We did a follow-up to that with Oracle that was more than just the 2 providers. I think we had, when I say over a dozen providers that participated in the Oracle program. Yep. And it was interesting, and it's I think the big back behind it is the big message I think we were trying to tell this. There are many ways to solve the problem. There's no one silver bullet. There's no one way to manage that. And so we were fortunate to have the momentum to push this content out, and really thankful for people like Monica Bay for helping us, put out the second study in LTN. And really from there, going back to my event days, we started to do kind of smaller things, like we did a program during Legal Tech with Judge Waxy and others, Counselor, why can't you Google it, to try and answer some of the questions we were hearing on a regular basis. And then, we started from there to think about, how we can connect the community as opposed to just putting, work out into the space. And that, I think, is the pivot that we made, is really into a community organization rather than kind of a research organization, and really providing a platform for people to connect with one another. We do put out materials every year. We do the spoliation guide. We just released Jeremy's Cases that Count book, that where we have the cases from, I think, the past decade plus that have been meaningful. Shannon's on the team that helped develop that. Also with the spoliation guide, where we've updated that now to include jury instructions from each one of the states. Some of the different state cases that are in there. But really, again, the main theme of trying to do is outreach. And we started first with Georgia, where we partnered with Graham, where we were doing the social function and they were doing the content. And about a year later, John Lerner from Above the Law, Breaking Media, reached out and mentioned, he asked me to MC a program that they were doing that they ended up canceling. And I was kind of down on the fact that they canceled, and they were also on the hook with the hotel for a significant amount of money. So I rolled up my sleeves and said, well, maybe I can call a few friends and we could do this program. So that was actually the first summit. And beyond that, that was in, it was 10, 11, 12 years ago, I think, somewhere around that. And from that, we launched Summit, where it was just an EDI event. And we did it every other year in my hometown of Fort Lauderdale. And then we go somewhere fun every other year. So we're back down in South Florida this coming year. And again, I think we've lived up to, the really helping the community. Like, we put up the distance learning program for $1. And the only reason we get $1. So, we don't get a database full of we're paying storage for. But the amazing thing around that is thousands of people have taken that program. The Washington State Attorney General requires some of the content for their onboarding attorneys. It has been probably the most impactful thing that we've done as an organization. And, we had volunteers from both sides of the V. We had volunteers from the plaintiff's bar and the defense bar, in-house counsel. We had volunteers from the bench to really help us do this, because, the one message I really wanted to convey is everybody deserves a shot. And, these conferences to go to, they're really expensive. They're, $2,000, and rightfully so. They're, food and catering and hotel costs and space costs and audio, video. And I was never down on events, because that's exactly what we do. But I wanted to provide an opportunity for young practitioners to learn the same sort of things that we were able to learn and not have to pay, a hefty price tag out of law school, and essentially give everybody a fair shot. And, I think it's, if I look back at all the kind of fun things that we've done, I think probably Summit is my favorite because I get to see all of our friends on a regular basis.
Right.
But I think taking the message that we do from the community and put that into the platform and really push that out. We are, the program is significant. I think it's 40 plus hours of training. You have to write a substantive article that would appear in a publication like LTN and submit it to the team, where they review it and provide feedback and comments. So it creates and fosters almost like a virtual mentoring opportunity for young lawyers. We have, and again, I'll shut up about this in a second, but I'm just so impressed with what the team put together for this. We have lawyers in India that are taking the program. We have lawyers in Africa that are taking the program. It's a global type of program, and honestly, we're thankful to Microsoft for giving us the nonprofit benefit to host it on Azure, so we don't have to pay the significant hosting fee for the video program like that would cost. So. A great thing that I think that we've done for the community.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And it's a great segue into one of our next topics of general mentorship and especially mentorship within a law firm. Shannon, I wanted to start by asking you in regards to, you said you were in the plaintiff's side in a plaintiff's firm and kind of were addressing some of the e-discovery or pre-discovery, pre-litigation issues with documents. But I assume that over the last 4 years, you've probably learned a ton when it comes to actual, discovery in the law and what's going on in terms of managing massive amounts of electronic data. Can you talk to us a little bit about like what that was like and kind of how it was the experience of being mentored and being guided through that process over the last couple of years?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a steep learning curve when you first get in it. Lots of acronyms, lots of terms that you really have to familiarize yourself with. And it was really being able to have mentors in this space that is the reason why I've been able to find success. Having folks who aren't afraid to sit down, you can ask the dumb questions, to really having that open door policy. And that's one of the things I love about our team in particular here at Shook in the e-discovery space, is that I never felt afraid to really ask these questions. I don't mind asking questions, but oftentimes in the workplace, you don't want to seem like that person who doesn't know anything. And so having somebody that you feel comfortable enough with to ask questions to, get guidance for, I think has been crucial. And Patrick is a huge proponent of that. He really encourages mentorship. Even me now, having more years in the discovery space, I'm encouraged to reach out to younger attorneys who are joining us to help guide them. And I feel empowered to do that because of the people before me who offered that to me.
Cool. What was is there any particular thing that you can think of that was like really, I want to use the word shocking, but I don't know if shocking is the right word to use here. Something that was just like revelationary, something that like just, really opened your eyes that you were like, I wouldn't have really thought about that, but that's just like, that's awesome. And you then dug in a little bit more on it.
Probably the number of litigation attorneys who really don't grasp their hands around e-discovery issues. I think that there are a ton of
tactfully put, Shannon.
I think you mean the 7, right? There's 7 of them that don't understand, right?
I mean, like there are a whole host of corporate attorneys and a whole host of civil litigators, but the e-discovery world, I think, is still relatively small in terms of people who really get their hands dirty and really understand it from a technology perspective, and then applying that to a litigation perspective. And so even talking amongst my friends who have been in big law much longer than me, and I will mention what I think to be common e-discovery phrases or acronyms for people who do civil litigation, and they look like, what are you talking about? I've never heard of that. So I think that was probably the most shocking thing. And so that's why I do enjoy being in this space, because I think that we really have a skill that is cross-functional in terms of practice area. If you're doing litigation, you need e-discovery experts. And so that's why I like being in this space, because I mean, I'll always have a job because there's always going to be litigation.
There's all, yep.
So Patrick, I'm interested about that perspective though, because you know, ESI is everywhere. Shannon, you said you worked in criminal. I do a lot of pro bono work for the federal defenders, and we've seen an enormous uptick in the criminal arena. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard about the fiasco up in Buffalo, the Morgan case, and just mishandling of ESI by the U.S. Attorney's Office. The judge actually dismissed the case without prejudice, let them refile, but was just, you know, she was just livid at the way things were handled. And so it's one thing to mentor somebody one-on-one, Patrick, but how do you get the whole firm to wrap their hands around it? As Shannon said, is that a struggle?
You know, I think one of Shook's many great things is the culture, right? So I think it might be a little bit of the fact we're a Midwest firm, Kansas City, but I think it's the culture here is just different than I think I've seen at other firms. Well, I've only worked at one law firm in my entire career, and then it's been Shook. It's that collaboration, that level of working together, and also just giving everybody a shot. That's I think just steeped into the culture of the firm. And so, when how we do it different, I actually, don't think we do it much differently than other places as far as execution. But I do think that helping each other, lift each other up, making sure that something doesn't fall, if something comes in, the team is on it. I have a partner where he has a fun saying here, and he calls it a group tackle, right? So it's really trying to jointly solve a problem, or ensure that we're going to put our best foot forward with the client. I think that's really how we think about it here. And then from the junior attorneys, I think it's the mentorship and the guidance, and making sure that no, it's okay. You can text me whenever you need something. You can pick up the phone and call me. Don't send me an email and expect that that's the last stop. And actually, the text or the phone call should probably be the first stop. Just really kind of changing the paradigm of how folks communicate, I think, is important too.
Yeah. How about in regards to diversity in the firm, and specifically diversity when it comes to e-discovery? It's a known issue that in general in big law, there's a minority and diversity issue in terms of getting people, first of all, just interested to begin with, but then actually getting them in the door and getting them into the larger, medium and larger law firms. But in e-discovery especially, it's been a major issue where, yes, you have some of the luminaries, especially in the some of the women of e-discovery, but the fact that you have to have a separate organization of women of e-discovery to really get them recognized is part of the problem. What are your guys' feelings? What especially Shannon, as a female coming up of color coming up in the firm and dealing with e-discovery, you're somewhat of a rarity. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of people who can say that they're in that position. What are some of the things that either you've seen done specifically in Shook, and otherwise things that you think will be helpful within the industry to help encourage minorities and others who are discriminated against in general to get more involved in e-discovery?
Sure. I think the key word in terms of thinking about diversity is intentionality. And that's one of the things that I've seen here at the firm, being very intentional about where we recruit, how we recruit. And you really have to have champions of diversity. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our last few hires directly within our group have all been diverse. So I think that it's about being directly intentional about that. The only way to curb diversity is to actually recruit diversity. And then also too, the second part of that is the retention. Like once you get diverse candidates in the door, what are you doing to ensure that they have a successful trajectory? Are we incorporating programs that are going to allow them to grow, to learn, to feel included, all those sorts of things? And I think specifically in the e-discovery space, there are folks who are really doing a lot about that. So for example, there's a new organization that was recently started. It's called BUILT, and it stands for Blacks United in Legal Technology, BUILT. Yes, BUILT. And the purpose of that is really to corral, folks of color who are working in this space, whether that's an attorney, whether that's a vendor, whether you're at a company, wherever you are, whatever organization you sit in, but really uniting us so that we can know that you're not the only. I think that there's power and community. So creating communities of folks who are traditionally not represented in these spaces, and being very intentional about growing those numbers as best that you can.
So Patrick, that's a great point that Shannon just made. Our old buddy Brownie Marian used to say retention. It wasn't so much hiring at his firm, it was retention. And once you get the 3-year wall and people got frustrated or bored or they didn't see a path to advance in the technology, specifically in the e-discovery field. Do you think that's still true? It sounds like you're overcoming it, at least at Shook.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much of a problem here at Shook. Back to my overall theme is kind of everybody gets a shot. And then secondly, build a place where you want to work with the people that are like you, or you want to work with the people that you get along with. You want to build a sort of diverse team so you get multiple perspectives and multiple backgrounds and experiences. So I think that what's successful here is, and Shannon, it's intentional. We have the Judge John Gray Leadership Academy, where we spend significant time and energy on training, not just on the ticky-tacky, this is how you litigate a case, but on discovery issues too, on business development. In fact, we just gave a presentation to the John Gray leadership team a couple of weeks ago on developing relationships and developing client relationships and business development. So I think it's being full pressed and thoughtful and intentional, as Shannon said, on training and education, and that sort of group tackle where you want to sort of collaborate with the people you're working with.
So who's going to carry that mantle? Who's the next Patrick Wu? Right? I mean, are there people coming up who want, because this is a lot of effort on your part, a lot of time and effort.
Look, Shannon's one of them, right? So there are, I think that, again, everybody's got a shot here. And that's the wonderful thing about it. And, I think 90% of what we do is personality, right? And just having that sort of right cadence, right demeanor, whatever you want to call it. And then the rest of the 10% is the knowledge. I think you can pick up the knowledge, but you just got to learn how to interact with people, making sure, again, to clients and to me, making sure that nothing drops, nothing falls. Project management is probably number one. But I think that there is a huge team of folks here that carry the behind the scenes stuff. That there will be more and more coming up through the ranks. And as Denise and I get ready to retire, which is probably not anytime soon, but
we're not quite there yet.
Hey.
Hopefully.
I think we are thoughtful about succession planning, about who's next, and ensuring that they fit in with the culture of the firm. And I think that's we're always talking about it, thinking about different practice areas. So we have sub teams here that are broken down based upon different approaches. So, for example, if it's briefing or writing, that would usually go to Jeremy Wickler. Jeremy's now a partner, and so we're thinking about that briefing team and developing that under him. And alternatively, if it's operational, day-to-day management, that type of thing. There's a partner, Gabe Egley in Kansas City. He's the person that's excellent on that type of stuff. So it's really just finding what color your parachute is inside of the firm or even the discovery community. But I think that most firms should be thinking about succession planning because
Sure.
it's right around the corner. And, I think that while I'm not retiring anytime soon, 20, 30 years goes by so quickly that you don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you made an excellent point. I just like to reemphasize it, which is the personality. We get so caught up in technology and we geek out on people. We're talking about, teraflops and positronic thrusters and, all the good stuff. And we forget that, at its essence, what we do is work with people and explaining that to people is just an enormous challenge. And I couldn't agree with you more. I see it all the time, especially in rural areas, small cities, down here in the South. You can't go in and start trying to show everybody how technically adroit you are, right? You've got to have that personal communication, that personal touch.
And drop a little bit of the ego too. It's get down and realize that not everyone's on the level that you might be ready to talk about. You got to get down to whatever level each individual person is on and customize the message to them. So, okay. So before we wrap up with a couple rapid fire questions, Shannon, obviously you're now involved in EDI and some of the initiatives there. Anything else that you've seen outside the firm that's been helpful that you've really looked at and said, wow, this is a great initiative? I mean, are you involved in BUILT, or is that just something that's been going on and you're aware of?
I am involved. We just had the first sort of kickoff mixer during Legal Week, which is, I think, or Legal Tech Week, but it's held in New York City.
Whatever it's called. Yeah,
whatever it's called,
Exactly.
it's called. And I was introduced to that because of Patrick, and through EDI and going to Legal Week, I was able to meet Dawson Horn, who is also excellent in really mentoring younger attorneys that are in the EDiscovery space. And so him and his team kicked off BUILT. I was able to go to that open cocktail reception, and it was wonderful to see so many people who looked like me, who've been in this space much longer than me. And I'm like, oh, wow, like you exist.
Representation matters. Yep.
Absolutely. And so it's been great to see and hear too, sort of the trajectory, because everybody's path to the EDiscovery space, I think, is different, but everybody brings something different to the table. And so I think that's really neat. So I'm excited to see where that program grows. I'm excited to be a part of it, to hopefully bring over more young attorneys of color into this space, because I think there's room for everybody.
Awesome. Okay, so now we get to everyone's favorite part, which is a couple of rapid fire questions. You can give a one word or a short sentence answer. Don't need to expound greatly. And then we'll turn it over to Tom to take us out. So the first question is for Patrick. If there's one short piece of advice that you could give your younger self, what would it be?
We didn't get these questions beforehand, so
I know.
No.
All right, so
this is the Stump the Stars part of the broadcast. Yeah,
I feel like I'm on RuPaul and she's asking each one of the questions. So I would say, just believe in yourself, pay attention in school, and maybe learn a little more about computers earlier.
Okay, Shannon, favorite movie of all time? See, she gets an easy one. Although maybe not. I don't know.
I have so many. I'm going to go with Steel Magnolias.
Steel Magnolias. Good one. Okay. Patrick, favorite book?
The Giving Tree.
Ooh. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Shannon, what is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
Insects. like the
Beets?
edible.
We need a little,
Okay.
we need a little more explanation of that one, I think.
It's like the ones you get from like a theme park.
Yeah, yeah. We
Because
have an
like-
insectarium down here
Okay,
where
yeah.
they serve, like chocolate covered grass.
I was actually at a Michelin star restaurant in Sao Paulo, and for dessert, they served flash frozen Amazonian ants.
Ooh.
That was like the specialty on the menu. So okay, cool. And then to wrap it up, Patrick, if you could live in one place anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Anywhere in the world, like, I'd say Hawaii.
Hawaii. Okay, that works.
Right.
And Tom, take
Well,
us out.
I have one rapid fire question I'll ask both of you, Patrick, given your background in music, especially Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
Oh, God, I can't get any respect here. Shannon, Beatles or Stones?
Well, I only know music from the Beatles, so I have to say the Beatles.
Excellent.
There you go. Okay, so our final question, which we ask everyone, I'll start with you, Patrick. If you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, living or dead, who would it be and what would you do?
Well, if it's our profession, I think we're saying EDiscovery, right? Not the sort of broader.
Wait, people have
Technology.
interpreted it. Somebody answered like Albert Einstein or something
Yeah.
like that once. Like they just
Someone
took
said Abraham
technology.
Lincoln
Yeah,
as an attorney.
lawyer. Yeah. So as broad as you want.
I'm going to throw a fun one out. So and I should pick up the phone and call her. Monica Bay. And we'd be going to a Yankees game.
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
Of course. That's a great answer. Great answer. Shannon, same question.
Yes, mine would be Judge Michelle Childs. She's a federal judge on the bench in South Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm like a fangirl, and I would take us like on a full like spa day. So man, it's sip
There you go.
champagne and just catch up about all things law and beyond.
Great.
So Shannon, we know her. So your fangirl thing might come true. We'll have to see.
It could happen.
See when you
Like to
speak
make-
into the atmosphere.
Like the Make-A-Wish Foundation here.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Well, listen, I want to thank you both very much. This has been a great discussion. Very enlightening, especially watching your discussion about the internal handling of mentoring and inclusion. It's just such a major issue in our space these days. But also some of your comments have been great. This has just been very insightful. I think
Yep.
we'll get a lot of comments on this one when we get it posted. And Rachi, any final comments?
That's it. Just thank you so much to both Patrick, Shannon. It was great
Yes.
having you guys here. We really
Wonderful.
appreciate it.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
So
Nice to meet you.
thank you. Hopefully we'll see you in person at a show now that things seem to be, knock on wood, getting a little bit better and more and more. What any date on the EDI for next year, Patrick? Is too soon.
We're in Miami. It's always after Columbus Day. So
Yeah.
It's that Columbus Day week at the Eden Rock coming up. We have an announcement that we're kind of coming out with, if it hasn't come out already. Microsoft has given us the conference center to do a one-day program this summer.
Whoa, nice.
June 22nd. So it's a smaller thing, and really excited that our friends there kind of came through for some space, because a lot of corporate campuses are still getting back to
Right.
COVID, and then we usually do our summer program at Cravath in New York, and they didn't have the space available for us. So it's back to that community and everybody kind of helping out, and helping us with our 5 employees and making sure that we can kind of continue getting back to normal. But that's the next.
Great to hear.
Awesome.
Great to hear. Look forward to it. All right. Well, then, thanks again to our very special guest, Patrick Uth and Shannon Schoultz of, I'm sorry, what was that firm again, Patrick? Riccardi and Bacon, of course.
Yes.
Everybody knows. Who doesn't know that, right? Thanks so much for listening in, and we hope to see you all again next time on the eDiscovery channel. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.